all. My name is Teresa Bailey. I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist and one of the co-founders of the UK Palestine Mental Health Network. I'm delighted to be chairing this first Café Palestine, and we have a speaker from Palestine, Nadra Shaloub Kevorkian, who's going to speak to us. I'm just going to say a little bit about her in case some of you don't know about this amazing person. So Nadra has a background in social work, psychology and criminology. And she's now law professor in the School of Social Work and Social Welfare at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. She holds the chair in global law at Queen Mary's University in London. She's written widely on the nature of settler colonialism in Palestine and has explored the relationship between the strategies and the technologies of repression within the Palestinian experience. Recently, she's focused more on the consequences for childhood of this oppression, and she has recently published a book on incarcerated childhood and the politics of unchilding. So, Nadra, welcome, and I'd like to invite you to speak to us. Thank you. You just need to unmute, Nadra.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. So good morning, and thank you very much for Martin for organizing, and for all the organizers for suggesting such a meeting. It kind of warms my heart to see and feel that even in those days where we're isolated and where each one is in her and his space and place, whether all the effect of the corona in the UK and in other places, you're still thinking about Palestine. So it's like welcome to the old city, to my space here. And since we're talking about isolation, I might want to first stress that the argument usually is, okay, it's very important to social isolate. I would stress that it's more physical isolation rather than social isolation. Here we are, we're all gathering on Zoom to talk about the situation of Palestinians in COVID-19. And I would start by this issue of how isolation became another regime of dispossession, how the so-called need to isolate, which is medically approved and all political leaders, and we are doing it, but then how does it become the same tool that it's supposed to protect us is becoming a tool of oppression and a tool of further dispossession in our context. So I would start by saying that the situation, and it's not an academic talk, it's just sharing with you what goes on here. So I don't want to be the expectations to be way too high. It's just my reflections and my sharing of what goes on, and how the entire regime of saving and helping and intervening medically is so discriminatory, and it kind of opens up, it opens a Pandora box. It shows exactly what goes on in Jerusalem, and who is being saved, who is being helped, who is being cared for, who is being dispossessed, who has the job, who doesn't have the job, how is the media bringing framing it. So I'll start by the fact that Israel's neglect of occupied East Jerusalem is probably clear to you. Legal regulations to evict in terms of the laws, the citizenship and the residency laws that and the easiness of revoking residency, the economic strangulation, poverty rate among Palestinians in Jerusalem and among Palestinian children is the highest, although Jerusalem is not, the poverty rate in Jerusalem is higher than other cities in the state, and the health conditions of Palestinians, according again to research and studies, is worse than the Israeli side. Needless to remind you that there are checkpoints and walls and deprivation of health and the fragmentation of the educational institution, where we have 3 different educational institutions in Jerusalem. And then with COVID-19, the Shabak is really officially and legally invading the privacy of the citizens to save and support and help. And here, let alone think about what we as Palestinians see, the intervention of the Shabak and their ability to detect our movement. Now, I need also to say that each neighborhood is being targeted differently, yeah? So when even the sanitary initiatives to clean the areas after the entire pandemic started, so some felt that, like in the old city in Jerusalem, young men and women felt that their area is not clean and they wanted to clean the area, or in Hessawi, they were arrested, and they were arrested by the Israeli police, and we have documentation on it. In addition to this, the issue of banning the Palestinian Authority from operating. So here you have a community that is under severe stress and anxiety with the coronavirus. And there is a structural machinery of dispossession anyway, in so many ways: the legal, the economic, and the health. And then with the COVID-19, when the Palestinian Authority wanted to interfere, they banned them. Palestinians and Jerusalemites were battling the coronavirus on their own. Even the hospitals that are here, and we're talking about 5 to 6 hospitals, have 20 respirators and lack of testing centers. The testing started only 5 days ago after the lots of pushes and struggles. And we must keep in mind and not to forget that Trump's administration cut 25 million in aid for East Jerusalemite hospitals in September 2018. So since September 2018, the health situation is deteriorating. So my talks with the director of the Augusta Victoria Hospital or with the Maqasid Hospital really points to major issues in the health system due to the policy, the Israeli policy. In addition to all this, when the PA is trying to help, the PA is being banned. In April 3rd, for example, they arrested the Minister of Jerusalem's Affairs, and they confiscated all sorts of meals and goods that he wanted to distribute to people. And after several hours, when they released him, the ministers, the condition, they asked him to be at home for 14 days, which means he can't go around, he can't move around, and he can't help the people in Jerusalem. And this is the minister of Jerusalem. On April 5th, for example, they arrested the governor, the governor who lives in Silwan. And the governor, this is, I think, over the 20th time since he was appointed as a governor being imprisoned. And here, the governor also was unable to support people. And both were planning to at least distribute goods and food for people. Then the welfare department, the Israeli welfare department, started assisting in distributing hot meals and food. And it's fascinating to see how from one side they're pulling the power of the Palestinians in helping, and from the other side they're offering the services, the welfare department services in assisting hot meal. Yet the question remains, how can they support Palestinians? So who would, from the Palestinian, who would give their addresses to the Israelis? And how could giving the address of a Palestinian in a specific place or in a specific neighborhood can cause further problems in the future in terms of their residency status, in terms of their rights, in terms of their mobility, and so on. So even, giving the mere, getting a hot meal in a condition and giving the address for the hot meal to reach them is a major issue, let alone the fact that lately the municipality is sending the municipality cars to Palestinian neighborhood, and the drivers of the municipality are so interested in taking pictures and showing how they are in Aisawi or how they are. And that is also another issue that helps the system to further survey a Palestinian. Another issue that came hard is those that should stay isolated, for example. What would happen to them? Would their residency status be revoked? Would their homes be taken? What would happen? That issue was so much on the social media, especially people saying that they don't know what to do, how to do it, or, you know, between us, you know, discussions between us. And that caused a situation whereby everybody ended up being coming and staying in small rooms in Jerusalem, because lots of people do have, you know, addresses in other places, and all of a sudden now a higher rate of people are living in the same room, and that is not good then, as you all know, in terms of the coronavirus, in terms of health issues. I would add to this the economic hardships. Medical goods medical equipments are an issue, and major issue here. And for example, in a discussion this morning with one of the directors of the hospitals, I learned that even when trying to purchase medical equipment, the prices were so high, and the fight is between power holders and those that have more money to pay for them. So that was also another major issue. What we have seen also in terms of the economic problems during the corona period is that the fines, you know, whether here in the old city, for example, in my walk around the house, where if they will see anybody that opened the shop, and some shops are really important for Palestinians, but we think that it's important for us. They don't think that it's important. So they put a fine of 5,000 shekels. And I can tell you that in the last case, 4 family members with 5,000 shekels, and we're talking 5,000 shekels is around 1,120 pounds or 30 pounds, yeah? So it's so much money. And then they arrest people and take them to the police station. So those that are trying to release them should walk to the police station. And those that went to take them and to release them also paid a 200 shekel fine for going to release them. So the issue of the fine and the economic gains that the municipality and the police is and we're collecting all those fines, and how by the end of the day, the corona is really becoming very beneficial for economically to Israel. In addition, people have lost their jobs. You know, lots of Palestinians were working and are working in the Israeli side. I can tell you about the Hebrew University, for example. We have lots of, you know, those that are cleaning the university, but they do not have any economic rights. They come and work per hour or month, but now they're is really, you know, my connection with them and following up, have no protection whatsoever. So people have lost their jobs, and people are extremely kind of confused in this situation, because you can apply for an employment, but who would even, then people would know, you know, why are you applying? So every single information is part of the surveillance machinery. And searching for economic support is major, but not sure where to go and who to address. The PA can help or cannot help. The Israelis can help or cannot help. What is the price of going and asking for economic support from the Israelis, which is a major issue that also came out now. In addition to the economic, another issue that I'm aware of is our students, university students that are unable to continue studying because of the economic hardships. Let me also remind you that not all of them have personal computers, and when universities are closed and when schools are closed, not everyone can use Zoom, and not everyone has Wi-Fi to be able to use it for studying. So that's also a major issue. Another important factor that started, and I think that the Palestinian Knesset member talked about it, and Adala, the Legal Center for Arab Minority, also addressed it, is the issue of language. Most of the publications of the Israeli Health Ministry and the website only provided coronavirus updates in Hebrew. So that created also major mess around, because people did not know. And language updates were issued only after major delays. And so here I can tell a little bit about it later, because a local initiative helped on this issue. One other aspect that I have detected is related to fears. And fears are really major here. I don't know how much, we're all afraid of this pandemic. We're all worried, we're all reading, and it's all over the world. But in addition to the regular, the fears of everyone in different places in the world, the fear of uncertainty in relation to economic conditions is major, and the fear of prioritization. One major fear that all my discussions in the shop with the shop owners here, when I go, I shop in the Souk, I get my groceries from the old city. And when talking to friends and family around, the fear of prioritization is who would be prioritized if we Palestinians will be sick, who will be admitted to the hospital, who will be helped, who will be tested, who won't be tested, and what is going on. One issue that is a discussion of the women's Jerusalemite Women Coalition that I'm active on, and we're doing lots of voluntary work, is Shafat refugee camp, where the population is very dense and no testing. And the question is, how can we know what is going on? And needless to say that most of the people there are working in the Israeli side, and mainly they were working in the Haredi, Me'a Sha'arim, and so on. So how come there are no testing in our side? So the major fear was the fear of prioritizing the Jewish over the Palestinian. And that was one major issue. The fears were also apparent in looking at the legal conditions of Jerusalemite. The question of what will happen with people with temporary residency, will they be thrown out, is an issue that came about. The fear of being left to die. I don't know whether you followed one of the media reports and we all got it, on a Palestinian worker that was suspected with coronavirus symptoms. And what happened is that one of the Israeli vehicles took them and threw them on the border, and he was there until the Palestinian Red Crescent ambulance came and picked him up. And this video was on social media, on different reports, and was circulated. And Palestinians there found the ill man lying on the ground with extremely high fever, struggling to breathe and unable to move his body. So that created major fear of, well, we're not going to be, this is another mode of eviction, another mode of killing. It's that economy. If in my work I talk about necropolitics, which is the economy of life and death, who gets to live and who should die, and that is one of the issues that I see it clear here. A fear that medicine won't be available for Palestinians was another issue. A friend that lives in East Jerusalem, close to me. A young woman with her mother. They're here they live by me for the past 24 years, and they do not have residency status. And the mother have asthma, and she's always worried what will happen to her if, with the asthma. You know, not only that they don't have the residency status, so they're kind of considered illegal or unauthorized, to be more precise, what would happen to them. So, and the main question of the mother, do you think that they will throw us beside the checkpoint and they won't look at us? But it's our house, it's my father's house, and so on. And the fears of abuses, of demolitions, of arrests. Again, you know, the issue of arrest, and arrest is hard from arresting children and invading houses and demolishing houses. Can you hear me? Yeah. So the corona did not stop anything. The corona is actually exacerbating this possession. There was a full video of police officers using tear gas bombs on passengers, beating traders at a marketplace, and harassing drivers, and generally, you know, really, and they arrested them on public orders. But by the end of the day, you know, the market, the veggies market, where all the products are being distributed, should work. So it works in Talpiot area. So if a shop owner would like to have veggies, he can't go to Dijoz, Suwani, but he can go to Talpiot area. So and anyone that is going is being arrested and being abused, and tear gas is on them. And this is another video that was that was circulated. And as I said, you know, the fear of not being served by Israeli hospitals, although, you know, there was one story that was circulated of a young man who was severely beaten in Mea Shearim by a group of settlers. And the story was, again, you know, rumors, as you know, in such conditions are circulating, and it's hard to know whether it's true or not. He said that no, he was treated. His parents said he was not treated, and they did not really take care of him, although, you know, he had a major stab in his head, and they needed to stitch him, and so on. So it's a situation whereby a major fear is circulating. And again, you know, it's not that I'm disclosing something that is not known, but Palestinians do not trust the system. You know, even if they need to use the system, they do not trust the system. They do not understand the language. It's hard to access places without being arrested or without being abused, and so on. So those issues are really becoming major issues in discussions among Palestinians. Another point that, in addition to the fears of prioritization of those that are chosen, so-called, the issue of checkpoints and walls are major, and we need to take, you know, this regime of checkpoints. So you know very well that tens of thousands of Palestinians line up in various fixed Israeli checkpoints that are spread around Jerusalem. And these permanent structures separate the, you know, Palestinian cities and towns and villages and so on, and family members. Now that is really affecting the mobility. I know that it's now about isolation and about staying at home, but as almost a week ago, workers still came, and those checkpoints are places for contamination, because the way they cross it, the amount of people that are there, and you know, our studies show that the time spent annually waiting at checkpoints equate to 60 million hours. Yeah. But when you look at it in those days, waiting while so many people are waiting to cross and maybe to find a job under such conditions, it's a health hazard. So in addition to the fears and to the time and to the space, it's a major health hazard, and being exposed to the COVID-19 at checkpoints is an issue that is being discussed. Yet people are, for despair and for fear of losing economic means, are still trying to cross checkpoints, and the way they're being treated is another issue. Another point that I wanted to raise is the issue of prisoners. And I think, you know, again, the issue of prisoners was discussed by many, and many in our area, but Palestinian prisoners' rights group like Ad-Damir are clearly pointing to the fact that currently 5,000 Palestinians are being held in Israeli prison services and facilities, and there is a major fear of the coronavirus. The shocking situation of them is really, you know, for example, the last report on Majiddo, and that there is a coronavirus. Two people with coronavirus, and that they got it after coming in contact with Israeli interrogators, is being spread. And then, you know, it's causing major fear and anxiety among Palestinians that their kids that are in prison will end up dying in prison without any health or support. And this is their Israeli authority is disputing it. And but again, you know, we have 100 Palestinian prisoners that were in the Muscovy, and 19 others in Ashkelon, and in each case there was a case of corona. So the question is, how do we really deal with the corona, and the reports are noting that prison guards have searched cells routinely without wearing protective gloves and without face masks, which is also against the Israeli Minister of Health regulations. Now, and as you know, as if I recall, last January, the public what's his name, Gilad Ardan, the Israeli public security minister, announced plans in the Israeli prison to worsen the conditions for prisoners. He said that they won't have more enough. He said that he wants to clearly limit their water use, their water consumption, their shower. So think about it now under the coronavirus condition, and think about what is going on today. An additional major concern is the issue of the police violence. The police violence is really working so fast. So I can just, you know, give you the examples of the last 10 days of the Mustaribin, those that are police people that are invading neighborhood. So for example, in Shafat area and in the Shafat refugee camp, violent clashes broke on, it was March 30th, I think. And then the Mustaribin, hundreds of Mustaribin came inside, undercover police, and intelligence and police dogs unit stormed the camp, arrested 9 people, including one woman, injuring several people. So it's not like stopping. In March 31st, they confiscated dozens of food parcels from Surbaher. Surbaher organized to distribute food, and they ended up confiscating it. In April 2nd, they confiscated veggies and fruits from the streets and vendors, and they just confiscated eggs last week. So it's this issue of the police that is helping security, military to confiscate, and the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of the Ministry of Public Security are working hand in hand, is hard at work here. And of course, you know, as I said, the issue of settlers' violence and settler and against Palestinians. For example, Majid Fasfous, who was working in an Israeli shop in West Jerusalem, was stabbed by 3 settlers and was severely beaten. And he explained that not only he was stabbed, but that the police kept him to investigate him in the field, and they did not take him right away to the hospital. And this complaint of abusing and hitting, there was also another case 2 days ago in Silwan, that also a kid with disability who was abused, and the ambulance did not take him to the hospital. They took him to the police station in Salah ad-Din Street, and only then the doctor came to the police station, and he insisted that his situation is bad, so they ended up taking him to the hospital. So you see how the machinery of oppression is working around the clock, and in different spaces. It's the economic, it's the labor market, and unfortunately, you know, I was hesitant to put it, but I kind of see how the Israeli settler colonial regime is using the health condition, the COVID-19 today, to further dispossess the Palestinians, and isolation, and the health condition is really becoming another tool of oppression. So it's isolation to further the machinery of dismemberment and fragmentation, to further the power of security and surveillance machine, and creating major fears. But you know, after laying out all the negative aspect, I thought that I would end up with more some positive notes on local initiatives that are happening here, and there are amazing local initiatives. And what is amazing about it is that it's in different neighborhoods. So you see it in Aisawiye with one group, you see it in Silwan, the Silwanics, you see it here in the Old City, in each, you know, in the Muslim quarter, in the Christian quarter, although, you know, they've arrested our kids a couple of times while cleaning or while taking care of elderly, or bringing food or bringing medicine. But local initiatives are still really working very well. And 81 local Palestinian NGOs have decided to really fill the vacuum in the different levels, and are working together. And they formed something called the Jerusalem Alliance. And the Jerusalem Alliance is trying to provide support to neglected Palestinians in East Jerusalem. One of the important initiatives that they found 2 hotels, and those hotels that volunteer to use their spaces for quarantine, as it's really very difficult for the infected to self-isolate, especially in overcrowded neighborhood of East Jerusalem. So the 2 hospitals are there to help. They also, the Jerusalem Alliance also set an information center. And as I said before, because of the problem with the language, and because some of the information was really not known, and people were extremely fearful, and there were lots of rumors. So the first thing that they did is that they asked people not to spread rumors on any issue. And they worked on translating and looking after information that is more reliable to people. And that really helped, because the first couple of weeks, the situation was really very confusing. So the Jerusalem Alliance set that center and carried awareness campaign on social media. And the Israeli ministry's website was because it was not really enough, and it was in Hebrew. And as I said, Adala really helped pushing that thing. The Alliance also set help for medical tents for quarantine at 2 hospitals, to take temperature of patients before letting them in, to avoid the spread. and I don't, and unfortunately, even those tents were attacked at one point here and there, and you know, running around to try to understand what can we do under such conditions. And it's really major effort by the heads of the hospitals around. And I can say that even the mayor of Jerusalem felt what is going on is wrong, and he asked the Ministry of Health to stop and to try to help the different hospitals in Jerusalem, but in at least in helping in testing. Maybe I will try to stop here, and maybe I'll say one thing before I open it to our discussion, is that, you know, we're looking at health and we're looking at the effect of health. I need to remind you that this settler colonial regime is really working in a way to constantly dismember the Palestinian, yeah. And this corona came to help the system to further dismember, because if we have power, is our solidarity, is being together, is rushing to help each other, is trying to be there if someone dies, if someone needs help. And all of a sudden with the situation, we're unable because of the disease. So that is really creating a major issue. So isolation is becoming a major concern. And unfortunately also among the Palestinian community, some of the people are really unable to comprehend the seriousness of the corona. So some are in denial, so they're out, and some are negligent, and some are resisting isolation because they want to go somewhere and to help someone, as in all societies, yeah. And some are taking responsibilities and responsible actions and intervention, but those interventions are also within an abusive structure, yeah. So how do we interfere when even the governor and the minister were arrested, when the food is being confiscated, when the markets are, and when so it's a major. So you see that power holders are really looking for political gains in this condition, and it's very clear. It's very clear, and I can also say that it's also among us. You know, I can attest to the fact that there are also conflicts between factions inside between the PLO, the Fatah people, and the Popular Front, who will do what, where, who will be arrested when. You know, all sorts of issues that are coming out that are really that brings to the forefront the fact that each party is having political gains, and Jerusalemites are trying with what they have, yeah, with really what we have. But even, you know, even when the municipality is delivering those hot meals and then taking photos of people, is being a threat. So COVID-19 really created an additional mode of dispossession, of dismemberment, and increased the sense of being entrapped. And this entrapment in this really maze that isolation and occupation became like, started working together, and the medical personnel are helping security agents and settler colonial powers to further their machinery. This is where we're standing today in Jerusalem. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Nadra, for that very disturbing report. And we see how the sadism of the system is increased, and the cruelty, the day-to-day cruelty, seems to intensify, and the opportunity is being taken to crush any sort of spirit of cooperation and alliance. And I noticed that, Victoria, you've got a couple of questions. I just wanted to ask Linda if she would make a comment, and then I'll go to questions. Thank you. Thanks, Nether.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Nadara. What you've said is heartbreaking and shocking. You've asked us to think about what you've said, but we must act. And so there's the very severe humanitarian help that's needed, but you've also laid out this political challenge. And you referred, a few times now to this settler colonialism regime. This is a rhetoric that I see that we really need to adopt here in the UK and further afield to describe what's going on. It is not a conflict, with two equal sides at all. This is settler colonialism. So in terms of our mobilization now, where you can, obviously, please, tell your fellow people, the Palestinians must know that we must care. But it is now for us to really pick up the mantle and to be acting far more politically. And so I said, starting by changing our rhetoric, obviously trying to coordinate more amongst our various Palestine support groups in the UK for, just upping our whole mass movement. This has got to be a mass movement campaign for you. Do you feel that you are being approached by either journalists or diplomats or anybody, there that you feel is giving you a glimmer of hope? Or where do the orders need to be given now to help support you? As a starting point, Nadara. I know others will probably go for more detailed questions in terms of medical and mental health issues.
Yeah, well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I just perhaps include Victoria's first question in this, because there may be a link. Victoria, do you want to ask your first question? And then perhaps Nadra could answer both of those together. You need to unmute.
Hi, Nadra.
Hi, Victoria.
Great talk. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. It was really great. Thank you very, very much. And first of all, congratulations on the book. I want everybody to read it. I'm reading it now. It's fabulous. You really give such a great context. But I just wanted to ask one very practical question. You've talked about this local groups that are working so efficiently, 81 groups. That's amazing, the Jerusalem Alliance. Are there some practical ways that people from the outside can help with that? Can we somehow give money, give support in any way? So that's, but I just want to say something in response to what Linda very, very well put out, that there are an immense number of initiatives going on here of political pressure, both on our totally hopeless government, but also on the incoming opposition leadership. And I think in America, there have really been terrific mobilizations, mostly around Gaza, but also around the overall feeling of coronus. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the issue of looking at it as a settler colonial machinery of oppression is major, because it is a structure. It's not this event of the corona and this is it. It's a structure, and all those aspects are working together. So if you approach one group, if you approach one system, they're all dispossessing. So the economic, so if you file for unemployment, if you move, if you don't move, if you tell where it's your address, if you don't tell your address. And I did not expand on, and I would maybe later talk about the education system, the different schools and what is going on in schools, as related to my latest book on unchilding. This machinery of unchilding is working very well in the corona, because it's the children are not in school, so they're all kept in homes. But the question is, who is responsible to support? So if the governor is not and cannot, and the minister of Jerusalem cannot, they cannot distribute food, and the food is being is being confiscated. Yeah. And in the middle, like 2 days ago, the demolition of another house. So it's all together, and this feeling of you don't know what to do. And this is where, you know, number one, changing our language and our discourse and really calling it a settler colonial machinery of oppression, whereby the settler who wants to indigenize himself, and all they want is to evict the native. And this pandemic is it's an opportunity to use it to further evict the native. The question, well, it's too early to say. I can't, you know, from the data I have from my talks with my friend today, I was talking with a friend who works with the Minister of Education, just hearing the stories that she was telling. And she said, Nadra, who cares about the kids reaching school? There is no food at home. I'm sitting here in the Minister of Education, and all I hear is, can you get a way to get us food? And to hear it from someone who is responsible in the Minister of Education is really very telling. So, and that really brings to the forefront the issue of the machinery of dispossession. So yes, changing the rhetoric, yes, making political pressures to really make sure, because the food that is given by the municipality is conditioned upon further dispossession. So you need to eat, but you need to remember that you're going to be under surveillance, and let alone that, you know, another story that my student was telling me that they bring food that doesn't even, you know, it's food that doesn't fit Palestinians, so they bring it and people don't know how to eat it even. So can you contract a Palestinian restaurant if you're so interested in giving food to Palestinians? So there are so many details, but you know, the devil is in the details. So it's very important to take those aspects for mobilization, for changing rhetoric, and to talk more about it. And yes, Victoria, you know, I think that it's you know, the group is there, and it's worth approaching them and asking them. But the risk always is, would they be able to use the money, or would the money be taken from them and confiscated? Because the work today is that you will be, like, for example, the way the hospitals are working, the only way is by cooperating and following the directions of the Israeli Minister of Health. And the question is, how can you do it without being co-opted? How can you, and this is the only way to be able to survive. So it's a catch-22. I'm telling you, it's really a major maze that requires me to think more. I'm not a political leader. All I can tell you is that I know that people are in need of food, in need of money, in need of surviving this isolation. Kids are in need of toys, and they're at home all day long. And there are some, like, these might sound small things, but they're major within families.
Thank you, Nadra. We have a question from Cheryl in the US about access to mental health services. Cheryl?
Oh, and thank you so much for being here this morning and giving us all of this information from the front lines. I live an hour north of New York City, and we're finding that mental health workers are on the front lines because the panic and the fear is spreading as rapidly as the virus. And I certainly can appreciate that food is essential, but I'm just wondering about the impact on mental health services in Jerusalem.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for your question. That's another issue that is on that we discuss all the time. There are new hotlines that were open, and again, you know, I really was engaged in really pushing it at an early stage. And this is the first time that we have it, and we are aware of the importance of having a phone call and calling. And the Coalition also for Jerusalemite Women was responsible for another hotline. So there are some mental health services, the issue is that they're not always working, and the main questions are more of, you know, when you look at, for example, the first calls that came were about the residency status and about the fear of being kicked out and about losing the ability to stay at home, or that the fact that maybe would they legal rights of Palestinians. And this is from the Palestinian side. From the welfare services side, the Israeli side, which I'm also communicating with, they talk about food and they talk about economic needs. The Palestinians are talking about mental health in terms of the easy, in, you know, the safety in staying in your isolated place. So it's like the mere, you know, keeping people in their place. Of course, you know, children, their fears, the ability to go out in small places, and no programs is also a major issue. But again, the question, who do you ask and what kind of answer you get?
Thank you, Nadia.
One more thing, if I
Cheryl.
may.
Yes, just
There are many programs online that we are.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just wanted to offer, there are many programs online for children that we are finding and making sure that families know about them. I'd be happy to send some of these links.
Please. Mm-hmm.
that's great. Thank you, Cheryl. Andy Simmons has a question about English language news sites, Al-Quds Space.
I didn't hear the question again.
Andy has
Yeah.
a question about recommendations for an Al-Quds-based English language news site. Andy?
Hello, yes, something that we might pass on via social media. There's Al Monitor, but that it doesn't emphasize issues in Al-Quds or in the West Bank.
Mm.
So can you just repeat your question, Andy?
Yeah.
Yes, I wonder if you could recommend an Al-Quds-based website, news website that has lots of English content that we could in other countries use to further the story in social media.
Yeah.
I know that Al Monitor, Al Jazeera, and that there are some others, but something that's specialized and that has enough English content for people like me that only know one language.
Yeah. Well, Al Monitor, Al Jazeera would cover it, but I personally follow Silwanic, and it's from Wadi Hilwi. And Wadi Hilwi usually, you know, some of it in Arabic, sometimes they're translated, but it's really very good because you can really follow the various cases. When was an arrest, when was a gas,
Yes.
or what.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Could you type it in, perhaps, or
yes, I will.
So we get the spelling? Thank you.
Yes, I will. Yeah, let me see. Okay.
Victoria, would you like to ask your second question about prisoners?
Nara, well, I was so pleased that you brought up the issue of prisoners, because it's obviously so dramatic, particularly in Palestine. But after the appeal from Adamir to write to ICRC, I did write to them, suggesting that couldn't there be a parallel to what's happening in Iran and what's being considered here. And I thought that would no effect, but actually I had back a very thoughtful letter from ICRC, and that's quite unusual. So I wondered if there was, if you think that kind of pressure could be more expanded by people here really taking it up.
Well, this is really a worrisome topic, Victoria, because I feel like, you know, they're caged in that prison, and I'm really worried because like the question of that lots of people that I talked about prioritizing and not helping them and leaving them with no medical assistance and so on. And I think that this is one issue to push, is the issue of helping the prisoners and preventing the COVID-19 inside the prison cells. And it can be done because it's a closed place, you know, it's not an open space. I think that it's an issue that I would think political pressure might work. That's one. The issue of mental health and making sure to point to the mental health of the people in East Jerusalem, as Cheryl was. Any ideas, and really any ideas that can help, but keep in mind that not everyone has Wi-Fi, not everyone has connections. Phones are there, yes, but not always. And maybe writing more about it, because that might politically pressure Israel, because so far, you know, if you look at the statistics in general, you know, Palestinian citizens of Israel are 20% of the population. We have today in Israel total 10,000 corona virus that were detected. Among them 165, if I'm not mistaken, until yesterday, not the number of Palestinians inside Israel. Now that the question is, what is going on? Is it that they're not detecting? Is it that they're not testing? Is it that people are, what is the story? I think the situation in Jerusalem is much worse because we are, you know, our people are working in Israeli supermarkets. If I think about the supermarket here beside the house in the Jewish quarter, who are the ones that were cleaning and selling and making deliveries and so on. And the question, are there testing, and can people go test? And the fear of testing is also another issue. So I guess that, you know, I know that it's all together. It's between the importance of looking at the prisoners, the importance of looking at children's mental health and the people, but maybe each time writing is one topic and pointing to it and collecting all information, keeping in mind that we really don't, it's all early, at early stage. So here a story and there a story, but we really do not know how much, how to move on, you know, even. It's confusing to us too.
Thank you, Nadra. Now, we're coming up to midday, but we can continue if people would like to do that and would like to stay on a little bit longer, because we have a few more questions. So with your permission, I'll extend the meeting a little bit. Nadra, is that okay with you?
Yes, yes.
So we've got two questions about support. One from Heba, which is about offering professional support in terms of mental health. The other is from Malcolm Wright about actions within our own organisations. Malcolm, would you like to ask your question first, and then I'll come to Heba?
So, I just wondering what you'd suggest would be the most effective actions that we can actually take practically within our own organisations and groups to help to raise awareness of the situation, the plight of the Palestinians at this time.
Yeah. You know, like, I guess at this point, you know, having such a meeting is important, because I would actually ask you, Malcolm, and ask Martin, and ask Victoria and Linda and others to more tell us what can be done, because we're barely moving. You know, I do go out more than others, and it's really overwhelming, the situation. It's overwhelming to us, and this fear. I shared with Martin last week when we were talking. I can share with you. You know, I live in the Armenian quarter, and we're about 800 people here, and only the last 3 weeks we had 7 deaths. Yeah. Not out of corona. So it's also telling you what is going on. it's this fear of not knowing. Yes, some of them are old age, but some other 3 were old age, but the others, it's this question of why are there so many deaths, and what is happening, and this fear of being thrown away, being evicted, being the residency being revoked, not being treated. And the way the Israeli security system, because medicine is working through the Shabak today. Just think about how Palestinians would feel when knowing that now every time I move with my phone is being tracked. And so it's all so overwhelming, but at the same time, and everything is coming up. So the history of negligence is up, the history of isolation, and the isolation with the walls and checkpoints and so on. But at the same time, you know, as I always say, we don't have the luxury of being depressed, and we need to keep on doing things. So I was busy in helping Palestinian students coming back from Germany because they could not come. And yesterday, another one who's in London who doesn't know when he can come back to his family. So it's running after Knesset members to help out and find a way, and talking to. So, you know, there's lovely, lovely spirit among the Palestinian community, and everyone is working day and night their way, yeah. Support and so the question is, what can an outsider under the condition mantra? And I'm against isolation. Like this Zoom meeting really warmed my heart, and it's important, because then, like, no, we're not isolated, we're sharing, and this is number one, sharing information. Number two, we can, you know, gather, you know, so if someone would like to offer mental health work, you know, I can definitely connect them. If someone would like to rethink a different way and write me on an email, or someone can gather all those emails and have ideas, it's the time to find, I don't know, out of the box ways to support. You know, my way 2 weeks ago was fighting with this Israeli police to allow them, you know, what's halawi, I don't know how to put it. Halawi is this Palestinian sweet. Fighting with the police, telling him that the halawi sweet shop should stay in the old city because we use it. Like, we eat za'atar, we eat halawi, we eat, so leave it, don't close it, because he wanted to give him a fine of 5,000 shekels. So those small little things that we can do. And I think that it's very, very important to keep on trying our way. I don't know. But think with me, because the opposite, we need you. We really need your ideas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Nadra. Hebad, maybe that links to your question. I don't know if it's answered your question, or if you want to.
Yes, it has. Nadra, thank you so much. I can't tell you how I feel hearing in details of what we already know, but it's really very difficult to hear. And I just want to use this moment to show solidarity. I've been trying to help some of the Palestinians who are trapped here away from their families, and you know, psychological support, but I'm also happy to do that with people in Jerusalem. So yeah, I'll email you or see what we can do. Maybe we'll speak also among us here with the therapist here online to see what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heba. Can I just draw people's attention to the chat messages?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know how to open them, just go to chat at the bottom, click on it, and on the right-hand side, you'll get a list of all the questions, and there's information there. For example, information about the PSC Zoom webinar on solidarity with Palestinian prisoners on the 16th of April. There's the site that Nadra mentioned, she's written up there, the A to Z Theatre in Gaza, having a Zoom on the 17th of April. And there's a question from Martin to all of us. about the importance of this type of meeting, and does it provide the sort of role for people in Palestine and for others who've come from around the world to join us? And if we do consider these important, people may have a sense of how often we'd like to have them. But that's just to draw your attention to the information. So I don't know if somebody else has a question.
Maybe I would say something about if you have any ideas, because I'm really concerned about the situation of children at home and the lack of, you know, it's like the continuation of occupation, and it's as if it's not enough, you know, the general situation now with the corona. So the question is, if you have any ideas, if you have any suggestions to the different community centers that are in the old city of Jerusalem, I'll be happy to pass it on, because I walk the streets and I feel that it's a topic that is screaming, and you know, we don't need to see, I don't need to wait for the fever to go up to know that there is another problem that should be addressed.
Would you like people to email you with ideas, Nadra? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I will write my email address here in the chat, and I'm happy to receive, and I'm sure my students that are online also, that are working in the welfare department and other in the education, will be also happy to learn and to think with me.
Thank you, Nadra. Mohammed, would you like to give your comment?
Thanks, Tessa. Thanks, Nadra. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Haveen.
Appreciated that you are with us, and it's an amazing that we're all together, you know, from our living rooms and homes. Just a quick comment about that recently told me that we now need your spirit and knowledge more than any time as a Palestinian, you know, and just to deal with all this. I don't know how to answer that, but I'm hoping that you can give an answer, or you know, just comment on that.
You know, thank you, Muhammad, for your question. I must tell you that before the entire epidemic started, I was working on 2 papers on home imprisonment. And for the past couple, you know, 2-3 years working on the issue of child arrest and home imprisonment, trying to convince everybody that there is major state abuse by imprisonment, and I could not convince. And now when I'm writing, I'm finishing it, all of a sudden the entire world is willing to hear the voices of Palestinian children that kept on screaming and saying, they turned my home into a prison, and they turned my parents into prison guards. And this is like one of the chapters of my book that Victoria just mentioned, that I really talk about how the invasion of the home, and now we're all in the same place, but it's still the power to find power in situation where everything is being under this machinery, the settler colonial machinery of dispossession. Yeah. Martin wanted to ask a question.
Martin?
Yeah, can I just, I'm actually just speaking out what I wrote down in the chat thing, but I think it's easy for us to either underestimate or overestimate, you know, the value of certain sorts of activities. And so I'm interested, you know, while we're all locked down, you know, feeling in some ways quite paralyzed, whether this is an important thing to be doing. You were saying earlier, Nadra, that this is not about social distancing, and that here we are kind of coming together socially, And, you know, this is one thing that is actually quite easy for us to sort of organize. And it certainly keeps us in touch with what's happening there in ways that, you know, I have felt very disconnected from, you know, as we become so preoccupied with our own worries and local situations and so on. So I am interested to know whether there is a general sense of this as an important activity in its own right, and something that we should try and replicate on a regular basis. You know, hearing from Palestinians and connecting with people around the world and so on. You know, is this something that in itself is a worthwhile contribution, if you like?
Yeah, well, I think that it's, if you're asking me, I think that it's important to ask the other members of the group, because yes, you know, you are under lockdown, but you're not under occupation. Yeah, so so you're still free, and I think that, and you still have the power and the importance of suggesting, of thinking, of supporting, of escorting, and sometimes it's small things, but those small things means a lot. And I'm saying again and again that how important was it when you asked me to speak, and you know, I sit and talk to people and read and go back and think about Silwan and Aisawi, and all of a sudden I needed to put it all together to share it with you. And to feel that, yes, I have an extended family, but it's a family by choice that I choose. And I'm thinking about the situation and about the people here that are, about the elderly that are dying fast, about the workers that are unable to reach or are afraid of losing their jobs, about children that are unable to continue their education, and about the and all of it under this health condition. So yes, it's any ideas, and you're in lockdown, which means you have the time, more time to think with us and to invest in raising. So if Victoria was talking about prisoners, so if one will take the issue of prisoners and another will look at ways to engage with Palestinian children. Yesterday, for example, I saw something beautiful, an initiative asking children to write a short story in the competition about this short story under Corona, you know, lives under Corona. And I thought that this is really amazing, because kids were excited to write their short story and to compete while at home. So I guess like those small, important really thing are the only way that keeps us. This is our respiratory system to breathe and to feel that someone is, you know, this is the other Corona that we can fight with your love and your warmth and your thinking and your support. Yeah.
So perhaps we need to think about how frequently we'd like to open our cafe. It could be a regular Saturday morning thing. And it may be that not everybody can join us, but perhaps we could offer that. And I wonder if in the meantime, people could think about what Nadra has said about mental health approaches. Are there people who have ideas about how things might be done in a slightly different way? Have we been doing things differently here because of lockdown and isolation? Also, very, very importantly, do people have ideas, suggestions for how to help the children who are living in terror, even under, in inverted commas, ordinary settler colonial times, but that there's even more terror for them now? So maybe ideas about what we can offer to children, and also to be thinking about prisoners. So maybe we could all keep those 3 points in mind, think about them, email each other, email Nadra with ideas. And I'm going to just suggest again that you check the chat on the right, because there are some ideas coming up there. I'm going to bring the meeting to an end shortly, but I'd like to ask Nadra, before I thank her, maybe to give us a few closing remarks. And just to let you know, Nadra, we're listening to you with love and warmth, and it's so wonderful to have you in our homes.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Can I
wonderful
make
to
a
have.
quick comment?
Yeah.
That Derek?
Before Nadra does that, sorry, I don't know, we're running out of time. Can I just make a quick suggestion, please?
Please do.
Sorry, this is Derek Sumfield here. Look, Nadra's given us some specific examples of the way in which the normal dynamics of oppression are seeing this as an opportunity to further their causes. If we can collate these sort of specific examples she's given, and I'm happy to do that, we can probably get it placed. I mean, at the moment, the British medical journals like the BMJ and the Lancet are full of the COVID stories. These are news items which have wide currency. The Israeli government is sensitive to material in the medical journals, which is why it threatens the editors and their correspondents. But the kind of examples that have been given today by Nader are just a start of the kind of things that would be difficult for them to refute. And I think we need to just to collate them. I'm happy to help collate them and present them in a digestible form for publication in the medical press as a news item or something. I just, I think that scores with them.
That's
excellent. Thank you, Derek. Nadra?
Yeah,
give us a few closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. I'm happy to share with you my notes and my references and feel free to do. And there are some excellent pieces that have been written by Palestinian physicians and health workers, including an amazing medical doctor who's writing on settler colonialism and Corona. So it's really, I'm happy to share it with you. We're working together on trying to explain, because again, I want to remind you that almost 60%, even over 60% of the medical personnel in Israel are Palestinians, yet the situation of Palestinians is not as good in terms of treatment, so which is really stunning. And and the reaction of the media is another thing that is totally appalling. Like yesterday night they were talking about, like, why don't Palestinians have enough testing? So even the woman that was running the news, Ayala Hassan, said, so if you feel bad, go test yourself. Why? So all of a sudden, when it comes to Palestinian, it's their responsibility and it's not the medical system's responsibility. And when it comes to Jerusalem, it's kind of silencing the situation. So the mayor would say a word here and would ask the Minister of Health to interfere and help the hospitals. But this is, and also we need to make sure that when we're reading what we hear, we need to read it critically. Again, going back to Linda's point, because if they help one side, it's also they have political gains. So how do we read what we see in the Corona without, so it's it's really spiral transgressive mode of dispossessing. So they give here and they pull here and they affect here and they take from here. And if I would say something, is that when we write, when we think, when we read, when we act, and we must, I don't take it as something that let's think if we should act. I think we should. This is not the question. This is what we need to do at this point. But how do we do it in a way that we're not giving power to those in power? That's my only worry, is that yes, it's important to write, yes, it's important to put things together, but it's also important, number one, to make sure that people are not endangering their lives and losing their jobs and so on. And number two is making sure that we're not giving more power to those that are already in power. And the fact that the security system is part of the Corona struggle in here is something that I really want us to keep in mind and to keep on thinking, because I feel I need your your minds, your love, your thoughts, your ideas, your whatever you read in other place, for example, that would be good for us. I read something in Kenya today that was fascinating that I might start using here. So I guess any ideas that you read and it might be good for us here, just send an email, and you know, maybe we should put a title to the email so I won't miss it. Maybe we should what UK something with your title, maybe, that I would know that this is coming from your group to the email itself. And
that would be, yes, we could do that, Nadra.
Yeah, but really thank you for coming to the old city, to my home here, and for a visit. And I missed Linda and her group this year, so here we are. And inshallah the situation will be better for you. All I could say, just take care of your beautiful selves and be healthy and be safe, and stay there where we need you. We need you.
Thank you, Nadra.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege to have you in our homes, as I say. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the cafe.
Thank you all.
I hope you enjoyed your virtual coffee and cake.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again, sending you all good thoughts and warm wishes to stay safe. And from my perspective, being in isolation myself, this has been a wonderful breaking down of the walls and coming together in the most wonderful way. And I think it's an act of solidarity that's really important, that when people try to divide us, that we come together and we enjoy it. So lots of love to all of you. Stay safe, keep well. Nadra, thank you. Linda, thank you for your contribution. Lots of love, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.